Hi, this is Ross Nickerson, and welcome to your monthly lesson here at BanjoTeacher-com. I've got a couple of things I'm going to show you today that I think will help you and give you some insight into some of the techniques you need for 5-string banjo playing. Thanks again for joining me. This month I'm going to show you some techniques for vamping, or what we use when we play just the rhythm backup on the banjo. And I had a suggestion from one of my students that I do something on this, and I thought that was a great idea. I've been doing these monthly lessons for quite a while, so I'm starting to, or at least I feel as though I'm starting to run out of things to cover. So this was a good suggestion for me, and I think this will be helpful to you. One of the most important things to remember about when you're playing rhythm backup, or vamping as they like to call it, is that it's the second and the fourth beat of the measure, being 4 beats in the measure, that is accented or really accentuated. So that really is an important thing to remember, and it teaches us not only that we're supposed to do that, but to also how to do it as well. Okay, so let me explain that for you. I'm just going to grab a G chord here at the 4th and 3rd frets there, and I've got positioned and thing. The first note that we're going to play is just going to be a thumb on the 4th string. So, okay. The second beat of the measure is when you pinch with all 3 fingers down here in the right hand, and then that's where the muting occurs. Not on this first note. That rings through. We hit the next beat, the second beat of the measure, with 3 fingers, and then we release. Now, another important thing that I notice when I'm teaching, that a student, if they're going to make a mistake, what they are more likely to do is to release too soon rather than too late. So make sure that you actually sound the pinch. It's going to sustain for a moment before you can actually mute it. So I guess the way I like to put it is you've got to play it before you can mute it. In other words, you don't mute before you actually do the thing. Sliding and hammering on and pull-offs are sort of the same way. You've got to play the note and then you've got to pull it. So it sounds like this. So it's kind of a, then it kills, okay? So remember, don't mute the first string, and then the pinch should be much louder than the first bass note. In fact, the first bass note, you could put it as it's kind of implied almost. Sometimes even when you're going quickly, you skip it all together. Again, it's the second and the 4th beat of the measure that's supposed to be accented. So it's okay. Let me try that again for you. Show you. I'll exaggerate, emphasizing the second and the 4th beat. Okay, we'll stop there, and then we'll take a little break, and then I'll show you some more things and play something that matches some tab for you. Let me explain the muting process just a little bit more in depth. When I do it, I kind of describe it as my hand kind of falls off the strings. I almost have a motion where they just kind of drop, but you're really, of course, just releasing pressure. But to consciously try to think of picking up your fingers all at once at the same amount is more difficult to coordinate, really, than just kind of letting your hand go a little bit. Just don't let it go too far. So the hand just kind of falls off. Now, the truth be that the tone of this is important, of course, and you want to get a good tone, but it's really more the where you put the second and the 4th beat, and how much really emphasis and attack is on it, because you're really just trying to provide percussion at this point. And sometimes even if you were to not get a good sustain before you released it, it's okay as long as you're still providing the backup that the other musicians need, which is just a good. That's something they can play off of, and at that point you're trying to kind of being a percussionist or maybe a drummer in the ensemble, and that's where it's really important is to, again, it's important to get a good tone and to hit it cleanly, but it's even more important to really nail the timing and hit it with a lot of emphasis and attack so that other musicians can play off of that. Okay, let me play something that I can put in tablature for you. In many ways, it might be better for me to not include tab at all, but if I describe this correctly, you can really pick it up pretty quickly by ear. And to me, it would be a quicker way to get that done. And it might help you to see how I might describe something in a piece of music that could help you with getting away from tablature, which is, of course, important too. So let me show you. It's just a simple G, C, G, D progression, and first of all, if you're just starting with these chords, of course you've got to get where you can really coordinate between the chords before you try to play it too much. But personally, I think the best way to accomplish that would be to just practice going between the chords without trying to play what I'm going to show you right now. In other words, just repetitions on things that help you to get the coordination to do it. Once you get the coordination to do it, what I show you should be able to you should be able to pick it up pretty quickly. So let me show you what I've got. It's pretty simple. There's one difficult move in here I'm going to show you just to make it a little more difficult, and it's just the beginning of a technique that you can really develop. But I'll show it to you, and then maybe I'll show you how I would maybe improvise around some of these techniques that I'm going to show you, which hopefully won't frustrate you, and you just stick with what we're going to learn here today. So let's try that. I'm just going to go thumb, pinch, thumb, pinch, thumb, pinch. Okay, so that's two measures of G. So I did one measure, one measure, second measure, the first two beats, and then the third and fourth beat of the second measure is. Okay, not only is it a slightly different thing with the left hand, of course, it's something with the picking. And what I'm doing with the picking is just going thumb on the fourth string, index on the second string, and then pinching with the thumb in the middle. So, okay. Now you notice when I slide up to the G at the 7th and 9th fret that I moved to the 9th fret there and then switched my fingers to go into the chord. But one of the things I did, and that's important, is I really hit it quite a bit harder with the thumb. So that particular thumb stroke is really accentuated so that you can get the sustain you need, and also just that the slide will come out and you can hear it well. Okay, let me quickly summarize what I'm going to show you, and then I'll perform it for you. Unfortunately, these videos at home that I do for free on the monthly lessons, if I was in the studio, I'd do a split screen for you and you could see a little closer up. But I think with the tab and at the description I gave you, it should still be helpful to you. So let me show you that. Really, on the chords G, it's just going to go. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the chord C and do exactly the same thing. So it's really just a movable thing. I'll go. Okay. I go up to the C chord up here, and what we call the D form or the D shape. Back to G. Okay. Then we'll go to D. Okay. Now I'm going to go from this position to this D shape. I could do exactly what I was doing before and go up here, but I think it sounds better to go down here. And I actually just slide backwards. I did that. And then it continues on. Same. Same again. And you could mix up the last few measures of that, like for instance, any of that is okay. Just a final tip, when it comes to the positions that you use, this F form here seems to be, well, I guess you could call it the best one, or it has two of the root note in the chord, so it really has, if you start your chording on this shape right here, you're actually playing in the third on the bottom. And technically that's not as important, it just doesn't sound as much like a G chord as this one. Okay, so this is a good place to start and a good place to end, and this position seems to work good in passing as you're going between the chords. Okay, let me play what's going to be on the tablature for you, and then you can work with that. But again, I just practice the techniques separately is a good way to do it. For instance, just over and over with the... That way you get the hang of the move or the technique, and then it's easy to mix it up or play it slightly different if you can do it. So again, I guess my advice would be to not get too wrapped up in the tab, but more wrapped up in what you're doing and how you're doing it and how well you're doing it. So let me go ahead and play that for you. I hope that was helpful to you. Not to be a show-off, but I'll vamp around a little bit and see if that gives you a little inspiration. It's a little difficult when you're teaching, because especially with tab, because it's going to match the tab exactly. So I don't really have the freedom to just kind of play it as I hear it or play it as I feel. So I'll vamp around a little bit and see if that gives you some ideas. But I'll try to stick pretty much with the technique I just showed you. About halfway through the vamping I just did, I noticed that my strings were squeaking quite a bit, and I thought about redoing it, and I just thought instead I'd just talk to you a little bit about that. First of all, a little bit of squeaking is it's unavoidable, and it really shouldn't be. I guess at least my way of thinking about it is not to be too concerned about it. When you're playing with others, the squeaking gets buried pretty good. There are some things you can do to, I guess, to minimize that. And about halfway through, I started to try and get it a little bit better. I'll have to watch back on the video and see if I did. But if you try to worry about the squeaking too much, you'll miss the slide. So anyways, let me see if I can demonstrate squeaking and then try not to squeak it and see if that helps you at all. I didn't squeak there. I guess it seems like what I did to get rid of it was just push a little harder on the string as I slid. Maybe that works. Okay, so there we both learned something about what gets rid of the squeak. Like I said, a certain amount of squeaking is okay, and depending on how high I've got the action will depend sometimes how much squeaking is going on. But I learned something there. I think if you just put a little more pressure on it, that will help. And then again, your primary concern is good rhythm and good backup and hitting the notes in the right spot. So if you get a little squeak in and you don't just release just right, it's all okay as long as you got your rhythm in the right spot. Thanks again.